Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We continue for today. And our current guest is the director of the Ukrainian Scientific Center of Ecology of SIM, Viktor Komorin. We are going to discuss the impact of the explosion at Kakhovka HPP dam on the Black Sea. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you for the invitation. If you allow, I would like now to briefly explain the current situation. As you know, on the 6th of June, there was the explosion, and on the 7th of June, the water was already contaminated according to satellite imaging. Dnipro was fully flooded. After that, on the 8th of June, at noon, we saw contaminated water near the city of Odesa. We took probes to check for oil products, suspended solids, because these are the main indicators for the quality of water, as well as the decreased salinity of the sea. We saw the decrease in salinity from 11 ppm to 7, and the amount of oil products have increased in 5 times. This means that the water is contaminated. And moreover, there is the waste in the Black Sea water, which can be seen by all people in the city. But taken into consideration the quickness of the water reaching the coast of Odessa, because we expected that on the next day, on the 8th of June, not on the 9th of June, but the current is quite quick. We also have satellite imaging that the contaminated water was closer to the settlement of Zatoka, so it has become even more quick. We have also taste probes to check a range of other indicators, like solid metals. And we have also analyzed, again, satellite imaging. And we think that now that to understand what contaminants there in the Black Sea, we need to go in the sea to take probes. We have been negotiating this issue with the military to use their vessels for that. There are some issues related to the security, but I think that we will be able to settle everything. We have been also discussing emergency measures. First of all, the assessment and scrutiny of the state at the sea environment and sea ecosystem to understand the impact of the contaminated waters on the Black Sea. It is clear that decreased salinity will dramatically change the ecosystem that we have here. We will use the results to develop and implement specific measures to clear the sea and mainly the coastline of the Black Sea. And we should also meet at the international level with the international experts, because in a couple of more days, this contaminated water can reach our neighboring countries like Romania and Bulgaria. The midterm measures envisaged the preservation of biodiversity in the Black Sea. In the water area that were affected the most. We should also keep monitoring the state of the sea. So it should not only be done once to assess the state of the sea environment. We need to take probes at least once a week to understand the development of the situation and to understand what contaminants can be brought to the city of Odesa, our country, and the neighboring countries. We need also to exchange ideas with our partners from other Black Sea countries to develop detailed measures that should be taken, including at the international level. As for the long-term perspective, we should develop and implement the seawater management strategy to achieve proper ecological state. Of course, this could be done after our victory, when we can assess all impact of the aggression of the Russian Federation with regard to the sea environment, and also to achieve the good ecological state according to the European directive and the sea strategy. This is briefly about the situation. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Yes, we have a lot of questions, despite the fact that you've provided a lot of details about the situation. I have the question about the salinity. Yesterday, we had representatives of the ecological inspection, and they said that the decrease was up to 2.5 ppm, and you've mentioned that up to 7. Is it an average number? Because they just mentioned the threshold. Yes, and I mean by 7 on the 8th of June. And yesterday and now, it is at the level of 4 and 5. As for 2.5, we do not have such results, but perhaps the inspection has more precise data, not only about the city of Odesa, but about the Odesa region. And they also mentioned that that was the lowest level they were managed to detect. The second question, this is the question about the EU countries like Bulgaria or Romania. Should they expect a significant impact on their environment? It is very difficult to say for sure now, but I can say that if contaminated fresh waters reach their coastline, they will see almost the same changes in the ecosystem as we will face. This is related to the great amount of different compounds, chemicals, toxic compounds like oil products and heavy metals. What about the inhabitants of the occupied Crimea? Will they face the same? Now, the area between the city of Odesa and the Danube River is contaminated the most, and this is because of the winds, currents, and the weather conditions that we have now. You've mentioned the necessity to go to see for more precise testing of water. And as far as I understand, this testing, this scrutiny can become the part of the criminal proceedings that have been initiated by the prosecutor's office. Yes, all the data that we have been collected are submitted to the prosecutor's office because they have some questions to us and requests, and this will be used further in their proceedings. And take into consideration the importance of your testing, Perhaps the military administration will create conditions for your regular voyages to the sea to check the contamination of waters. What will be the impact on the biodiversity of the Black Sea because of the desalination? Should we be afraid that the fish will be killed here or that it would move from the coastline of Odessa? The problem is not just that the fish will leave our water areas, although it is partially so, but the border organisms like the bullhead fish could be damaged significantly. And this is not only because of the fresh water and toxic substances. Could be the result of the consequences of the process that we have been facing. And this could be eutrophication that could be due to the lack of oxygen closer to the bottom. That could kill mussels and the bottom organisms in the sea. So this is a complex problem. This is not a direct impact. The impact could be also indirect. And my colleagues have asked me about mussels. Yes, we could expect significant damage. Yesterday, we had representatives of the ecological bodies, and they told that they asked people not to buy fish caught in the Black Sea. Do you think that it could be a significant threat, and for how long will it be forbidden? The problem is that the toxic substances, heavy toxic substances, are accumulated along the whole trophic chain of the ecosystem, starting from the small bodies to fish. And so if a fish stay for a long time in such water, it can accumulate significant amount of toxins. Not only fish, but also mussels. And of course, it could be dangerous to eat such fish or mussels. It can lead to poisoning with the toxic substances. So I would not recommend to eat fish now. And I would also like to add a few more details. The toxic substances are accumulated on the bottom of the sea as well. And if the situation improves in a month or two, closer to autumn, but in autumn, when we have storms, the situation will deteriorate again because these accumulated toxic materials will get to the water again, so we will have secondary contamination of the water. We should also remember about this. And we should understand that at least for 1 year, we should not expect any recreation activities in the Black Sea, because I would not recommend to swim in the sea and not to catch fish, at least near the city of Odessa. And I wouldn't recommend to eat the marine products. So for 1 year, as a scientist, you do not recommend to eat anything from the Black Sea near Odessa, Mykolaiv, and other regions that were damaged by the explosion. Unfortunately, yes. That was my next question about the long-term effects of this impact. Because some people believe that the sea could process all these substances, all these materials, but you say that you do not recommend to swim or to eat something from the sea for 1 year. Yes, there are some toxins that decompose for quite a long time. There can be organic compounds that could decompose for the next 30 years. And of course, if they get to the Black Sea, they will be accumulated there in the sea organisms on the bottom of the Black Sea, and this means that there could be secondary contamination of the water. The sea will process everything that gets there, but it requires quite a long time. And sometimes the organisms of the Black Sea do not have this time. They don't have enough time to adjust to the new conditions. One more question about your possible voyage. What indicators could you assess that you cannot get from probes that you take near the coastline? We can assess all these indicators, but only in the water which is closer to the coastline. But I want to say now that the bigger amount of contaminated waters are further from the coastline. So we can assess hydrochemical indicators, oxygen, pH. This is also the contamination of the Black Sea environment with oil products, with organic carbon, and with the heavy metals. And we can also analyze the changes in the biodiversity, the change of phytoplankton, zooplankton, etc., to understand the impact of this contamination. So we need to assess everything to understand the current situation, and also to develop the mathematics model to forecast what the midterm and long-term perspectives so for the upcoming several years. Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. We will gladly invite you here with more positive news, but of course we will continue to monitor the situation. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you. Our next briefing will take place at 1 p.m. and it will be dedicated to the preparations of the healthcare facilities of Ukraine to possible epidemic diseases after the explosion at dam. Stay tuned.